everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to the end of September recap. Seems like we were just sitting down to discuss the end of August, and here we are already with another month past. The leaves are just now starting to turn colors heading into fall. It's getting cooler out, and outside activities are starting to wind up. Here in the land of Phoenix Knight, it's also been busy, so let's talk about everything on the channel from September. First up, let's talk about the fall campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game. As you may know if you're on the channel, Arkham Horror the card game has been obviously very well loved by yours truly. This is the 6th campaign I've run on the channel since I started the channel, and this year for the fall campaign we're running Return to Path to Carcosa. So we survived the first campaign end checkpoint last week, and we're getting ready to continue the second half of the campaign tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow's scenario is already set up. So, and Mandy and Jacqueline so far have been handling business. It helps that their decks are very strong and that they're coming in with a lot of experience. Jacqueline's on her 3rd campaign, Mandy's on her 2nd. Plus, I started Mandy in last year's fall campaign with about 40 experience, I think, so they have a lot of experience put into their decks. But that's it for my musings on the fall campaign for Arkham Horror the card game. Now let's move into our next game on the channel, which was a debut game on the channel, and the first Legacy game I've breached in Aeon's End, Legacy of Gravehold. Aeon's End Legacy of Gravehold from Indie Boards and Cards is a game set in the Aeon's End universe where you're playing breach mages trying to defend your town from the Nameless. As a habit, we've been defending Gravehold as in our previous plays of Aeon's End, but this time in Legacy of Gravehold, there was a new town introduced, the town of Azer, A-Z-E-R. We played through the first scenario of that side of the campaign, and it was actually very confusing. I had a lot of problems with it. I had somebody point out some problems I was having on the Geek, but apparently I wasn't the only one having the same problem. Sounds like it was a problem with how some of the cards are worded for that scenario. And it turns out, I normally like narrative text, but there was a lot more narrative text than I was expecting in this one. To the point where, after we got through the first scenario, I actually had to go back and record a second separate video just to finish out the narrative to get to the second scenario, which I'm not exactly sure when that scenario is going to get to the channel. I'm very hesitant to get that back to the channel just because of how much narrative there was in there. For the next scheduled play of that game, I was going to continue that Legacy game next month, but for the next play, I'm swapping over to Aeon's End, regular Aeon's End. I might feature Aeon's End Legacy instead, but I haven't decided on that yet. I still want to kind of think that through a little bit, but that will do it for our musings on Aeon's End Legacy. Now let's move into our next game, which was The Hunters from Consim Press / GMT Games. The Hunters from GMT Games or Consim Press dumps you into a German U-boat in World War II Europe. I was about to say World War II Atlantic Ocean, but the Atlantic is not the only place we can patrol. We've patrolled the British Isles, we've gone down to the West African coast, and we even had our first patrol in the last video, sending us out to North America. And because of how long that patrol was, I ended up cutting that video at 2 patrols. But Corvette Capitan Zimmer continues to terrorize the waters of the World War II waterways. His current stats, he's up to 12 patrols that he's been out on. He's sunk a total of 28 ships and nailed a total of 193,700 tons of Allied shipping. So we're definitely getting near to 200,000 tons on that. That's it for the Hunters. Now let's go talk about our background campaign in Hero Realms. Hero Realms from Wise Wizard Games is a fantasy deck builder very similar to Star Realms, and both games we've featured on the channel. The only difference there is what coat of paint you want. Basically, you're trying to buy actions and champions, I think, where it's ships and bases in Star Realms, with the goal of trying to reduce your opponent's health to 0 before yours gets reduced to 0. We were on the last scenario of the background campaign, where we were taking on Melvin the Beastmaker, and he hammered us pretty hard on the second try on that scenario. So per the house rule that I introduced to deal with the treadmill campaign that Hero Realms has, the background campaign is now over because I don't want to keep filming repeats on that last scenario. So the background campaign's over, but we've got a lot of background content we can sink our teeth into. Anyway, that's it for Hero Realms. Now we had a surprise playthrough of Marvel. We had a playthrough of Marvel Champions, the card game. Marvel Champions by Fantasy Flight is another living card game in the vein of Arkham Horror, the card game, but I think this one works better as a one-shot rather than a campaign, because like Hero Realms, this one's got another of the treadmill campaign experiences, where you have to win each scenario before you're on to the next one. And of course, you guys know my feelings on treadmill campaign experiences. We had Storm and Phoenix in our playthrough take on Rhino, and it was more of a nail-biter than I was expecting it to be, to the point where we almost had to sacrifice Storm, but Phoenix did manage to finish Rhino off. It was coming down to the wire with Rhino stacked up to start doing a lot of damage. So we were looking at having to lose Storm on that one, but again, we managed to finish Rhino off. That's it for Marvel Champions. We had a couple of bouts in the Greatest Boxer Tournament in Title Bout 2. Title Bout 2 by Straight Jab Media, as I've mentioned, is a boxing simulator, and we're playing through a tournament to determine the highly unofficial greatest boxer of all time according to Phoenix Knight. Now, I don't know if I would actually say this. If I was having a serious conversation, I'd probably name Muhammad Ali as my GOAT, but this is just a fun little tournament that we're doing for our own little March Madness kind of thing. But our 3 bouts we had were Vitaly, I believe it was Vitaly Klitschko. Let me double check the tournament. We'll be coming back to that. Yep. Vitaly Klitschko advanced to the quarterfinals over Evander Holyfield via disqualification, which Holyfield didn't really need to cheat in that bout. If you watched that bout, Holyfield was in total control of that. I think he just got greedy and got himself disqualified in the process. Then in quarterfinal action, Rocky Balboa advanced over Ken Norton into the semifinals, and Ken Norton's actually the owner of our upset of the tournament so far, where he managed to eliminate Muhammad Ali in 15 rounds. Similarly, it took Rocky Balboa all 15 rounds to beat Ken Norton by a majority decision as well, and it didn't help, and I think this played a lot into why it was a majority decision rather than a unanimous decision, that Balboa actually broke his hand in round 3 or 4 of that fight. We're going to come back to that broken hand when we get Rocky Balboa back to the channel in the tournament. And then in the bout that just went up on the channel today, Rocky Marciano got past Ivan Drago via a 3-round TKO in scoring 60 points. That fight was about as one-sided as I thought it would be. I could have seen it going either way. But that's it for the Greatest Boxer Tournament in Title Bout 2, and for all the games. Now let's recap Mystical Munchies. We had our first redo month on Mystical Munchies. We took recipes we'd somehow screwed up on previous attempts on the channel and redid them. Here's how we did. With the appetizer, which was the Pitmaster's Choice out of the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge Blackspire Outpost cookbook, it turned out much better, and it was actually really good. It helped that I was very careful with timing in the broiler, where I topped off at about 4 minutes per side, and that seemed like it was where I wanted to be. Maybe it was still a little bit on the wet side where you want it to dry out a little bit more, but all in all, I was really happy with how this recipe turned out. Next, we had the polystarch portion bread out of the same cookbook, and it was still peppery, but I don't think it was nearly as bad as the first time. It's a simple bread recipe anyway that you put in the microwave, and microwave bread, I hadn't even heard of that being a thing until this recipe crossed my radar, but I could see myself using this one. Next up, we revisited the Marvel Eat the Universe cookbook with Deadpool's chimichangas. The recipe as written was for chimichangitas, but those small burritos were a big part of the problem that I was having with this recipe. It seemed to work a lot better with bringing it up to full size, and I was very happy with the taste if it turned out a touch on the salty and bready side. The bready side probably can't be helped just because of how much tortilla you have in there relative to the number of ingredients you have on the inside. As for the salt, it didn't help that we used a mountain of kosher salt, so that's probably why it tasted salty. But otherwise, I was happy with how this recipe turned out. Next, for the dessert, we had the no-bake cookies, and these... The problem we had with this recipe the last time we made it was that it dried out because I had the recipe on the stovetop boiling for way too long. This time it actually turned out and it was really good, but it was very much sweet. Although you've got 2 cups of sugar in there, so it's not a complete surprise that it's very sweet. And it helped that I paid attention to the boiling timer. We watched it boil in real time, and I thought about how I wanted to do that. I thought about maybe getting cute with it again and coming back to it when the recipe was boiling, but coming back to that was a big part of how I got in trouble to begin with the first time through. So I decided to watch it boil in real time, and you saw the results that we had. As for the drink, we revisited the lava colada in the World of Warcraft New Flavors of Azeroth cookbook. This recipe, I was curious if it was going to thin out or not with a little more experience in the blender. It didn't really seem to. It still tasted fine. So I suspect the thickness of that is probably behavior as intended at this point. But that's it for the lava colada. Next, let's go through Ask Me Anything. I should have mentioned it in the Title Bout 2 video, but this was the end of the Title Bout 2 video was the end of the Ask Me Anything questions. So as a reminder of how this segment works, if there's something you want to ask me for the Ask Me Anything segment, leave a comment in any video starting from this recap to the last video, and I'll try to mention it when it's coming due, and I suspect it'll be, let me see if I can get a calendar in front of me for October. It will be probably whatever the video is on the 29th. I'll know for sure what that is by the end of the month. So the way it'll work is you'll leave me a comment in any video from this recap to the last video of the month with an AMA tag and what you want to ask me for it. And if it's not too personal, I will answer it. But again, I do reserve the right to not answer questions. But the only question this month we'll tab over. The only question from this month was from Matthew, who wants to know if there are any collaborations I have in the works, because he's enjoyed my collaborations with Jester. Now, speaking of Jester, I don't normally announce these collaborations until they're more set, and I'm waiting for confirmation from Jester on this, but I do have something in the works with him where he might potentially tag into the fall campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game. I'll announce more about that once I hear confirmation from Jester on that. So we can tab back. Actually, before we tab back up top, I do want to go through the Greatest Boxer Tournament real quick. Both the score sheet, which I've got to bring that over here. There we are. So as we can see, Matthew is still up on points, 7-4. His winner is still in it, but his winner also had a broken hand from his quarterfinal bout. Mine has long since been eliminated. Then we'll take a quick look at the brackets. And we'll see that both of the Rockies, Marciano and Balboa, have both made it into the Final Four. So we've got Sonny Liston versus Lennox Lewis and George Foreman versus Vitaly Klitschko left to go. Now we'll bring it back up top, and we'll talk about what's coming in October. The fall campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game, will continue on Sundays this month with the second half of the campaign. And I'm not sure what else we're going to feature on Sundays because there's another campaign end checkpoint in there. So as backup content, let me see what I've got lined up for that. Here we go. Let's see, as far as backup campaign goes, we're probably going to have another bout in the Greatest Boxer Tournament entitled Bout 2, and I'm looking at featuring a new War Air game on the channel, or no, new Air War game, as we debut Storm Above the Reich. It'll either be Skies Above the Reich or Storm Above the Reich from GMT Games. As for Wednesdays on the channel, we're going to feature mostly brand new faces on the channel, but we are going to have one familiar face. So we're going to start off the month on Wednesdays by debuting a brand new game and company on the channel as we debut Mag-23 Guadalcanal from Historic Wings Games. Now, as you might recall, I'm running a giveaway on that where I'm giving away a copy of Mag-23 Guadalcanal along with the logbook for that game. I'm going to give that away once I hit 300 subscribers. That's my 400th video celebration. So if you're subscribed to the channel and I'm willing to ship this international, go find the video for the 400th. Go find the 400th video on the channel. Leave a like on that video and a comment telling me A, if you're interested in being entered in the giveaway, and B, what game that you've seen me unbox on the channel, whether it's just a delivery or something I've gone deep on that you want to see me feature on the channel. December, I'm expecting to have a content explosion, so I'm looking for I know some of what I want to feature, but I'm open to suggestions on what I feature in December. Debut games will continue on the month as we debut a new Terra Mystica-esque game, Age of Innovation, that just came out earlier this year. We're going to play Aeon's End as well, as I mentioned earlier, and then we're going to finish off the bout with another debut game as we play Call to Adventure, Epic Origins. As for the action in the Greatest Boxer Tournament for Title Bout 2, we're going to leave that in Lost Carcosa. No special changes other than also adding the cornermen. As for Mystical Munchies, October will see us move back to Azeroth with the World of Warcraft official cookbook. We'll be cooking buzzard bites, cornmeal biscuits, crunchy spider surprise, and no, I doubt it has spider meat in it, so you can relax on that front, and Dalaran brownie. With that, let's wrap this video up. That's the end of September recap. October will see plenty of content on the channel. As for what's coming up, tomorrow we're continuing the fall campaign in Arkham Horror, the card game, with the 5th scenario, Return to a Phantom of Truth. And Wednesday, we're starting the month of Wednesdays with our debut playthrough of Mag-23 Guadalcanal from Historic Wings. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.